Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Dave Jenkins. Some people call me MZ. I this morning am going to take a little bit of time and talk about something that I'm seeing happening, and I've labeled it on Facebook Live: vaccine conspiracy theories, coronavirus, and diaspora communities. And I'm going to talk about something that I think needs to be talked about. I'm seeing some talk about it, some write about it, but it's a really, really big issue that really the leaders of our diaspora communities have to be paying attention to. And I am in my living room, also my Facebook Live studio, with my lovely wife across the way who's giving me editorial comments, and she suggested that I sit up and get my shirt tucked in right. Let me kind of give you some intros of what I'm going to say. First, some of you are going to be noticing that I am going to take a different tone and a different dialogue than you're used to. Most of you will comment that generally the tone that I take is inviting conversation, letting people get all the information out on the table, and then trying to kind of academically sort through it and trying to say we can get everything on the table, we can talk about everything. Today it's going to look more like a public service announcement, and I'm going to be talking about some things, but I'm not going to permit some things to go onto the table. And some of you will say, oh, you're being controlling, and I'm going to say, no, I'm being pastoral. Let me tell you what has happened in the last couple of years, and I have thrown some links in here. You can follow them and look at it. But one of the things that happens as people immigrate from their home area to a new place is it's a very confusing experience. All of the mechanisms of understanding life get taken away, and you have to learn new languages, new culture, new government things, new ways to educate your children, new medical systems. And most people, when they first immigrate from outside the United States into the United States, will struggle for years being poor, being confused, trying to learn, and then they're going to stumble onto things that they never had dealt with before. And something that has happened the last couple of years has been, and I think a lot of you who are Westerners have seen this, there has been a lot of conversation about vaccines. And there have been these theories that vaccines create autism, is one of the specific things that I see over and over again. And there have been some individuals who have started promoting theories of vaccines causing autism. And if you have an autistic child or you know somebody with one, I want you to hear mercy. And I want you to hear, I understand that. And, I deal with disabled children myself frequently. But when a group of people have immigrated to the United States or a Western nation and they're struggling with their kids, then they start to notice our kids are different in the Western world and they remember them back home. They will sometimes gravitate towards a theory that looks academic, and then they'll impose it across their whole community. And in the last couple of years, there have been different immigrant communities in the United States, Canada, Western Europe, who have generally bought into a theory that vaccines are causing autism and they have ceased to vaccinate their children. And then you have these pop-ups of measles, the phrase, where you have basically a measles outbreak in Western cities in the United States, Canada, or Europe, and it's basically based upon immigrants who can't sort through things and then gravitate towards a conspiracy theory. I want to kind of speak very strongly against those conspiracy theories. And I also want you to note I am not going to put any links about them into my thing. If you insert one below, it's going to be immediately deleted as soon as I see it, because I believe those conspiracy theories are causing children not to be vaccinated. Those were causing children to get sick. I haven't seen incidents of children's death, but if you talk to old people, they will tell you about memories of times when vaccines were not available and children died from measles. Saying that, that's the historical reason. One more thing about this. There is a lot of nationalism that is floating around the Western European nations, Canada, and the United States, that is really speaking in a derogatory way, a prejudicial way, a racist way, frankly, a sinful way about people who don't have white skin and who have come here recently. And those people who are doing that will go back and point to the measles outbreaks and say, see, these refugees, they can't sort through things. See, they're dirty people. See, their health is poor, and now they're ruining the health of our nation. One of the reasons I'm speaking against this is, one, these vaccine conspiracy theories are hurting our kids. Two, it's encouraging the sin of racism in the West, and I want that to stop. Now, let me kind of bring you up to speed on what I'm seeing happening. And again, I'm not going to give you the links. I'm not going to give you the YouTube videos, but I'm going to tell you what I'm seeing happening. I'm seeing, as we are dealing with a pandemic that is global in nature, almost all of us are feeling the emotion of fear and of confusion. We don't quite know what's going on. It makes us afraid. All of the ways that we have known to live have been taken away from us. We're hurting in lots of ways. Some of us are hurting economically. We're hurting relationshiply. We're really struggling. When we're really struggling, our human response is going to typically go looking for answers, trying to find ways to build systems of control back, and that's a good thing to do because we're made in the image of God. We're made to create. We're made to pursue knowledge. We're made to pursue order. That's a good thing to do. But sometimes when we start doing that, we will fall into a pattern where we're looking for some special elite knowledge, where we're thinking there's secrets out there. We start to believe there's conspiracies out there, and we gravitate towards theories that are, instead of helping us seek knowledge and live in love, they give us what we think is some special knowledge which protects us from others that we're afraid of. And I am seeing these vaccine conspiracy theories that were really discredited a couple of years ago gain a tremendous amount of traction. And I may be seeing it more than others. Let me tell you what I am seeing. I am seeing these vaccine conspiracy theories pop up on Facebook and pop up from Christian leaders, pop up from people that are thoughtful, pop up from people that have white skin, pop up from people who have brown and black skin. But usually if they pop up on Facebook, they will gain a short amount of traction, and then Facebook usually will cover it up and say something to the effect, this video has untruthful information or it's partially false. I'm on a number of WhatsApp groups that are basically diaspora communities where I've got some relationship. Maybe they're a Kenyan, a Rwandan, a Ugandan, a Sudanese, a Congolese, a Tanzanian. Some of them are national in scope, some of them are regional in scope. And they're the places where there's kind of everybody who has certain understandings and certain cultures shares information. I'm seeing those conspiracy videos start to float around in our small WhatsApp groups. A couple of times a week, will have somebody send me a WhatsApp, or they'll send me a Facebook message that has a tie to these things. And I think they're getting a lot more traction now than they would have had 2 years ago. They're getting traction because we feel confused and fearful, but they're floating around. And if they come in on an email or a text or a WhatsApp message, there's really no editor to say, oh, that's partly false, that's inaccurate, and shut it down. It just keeps floating through our community. Let me tell you a little bit about how they typically look so you can identify them and know this isn't good stuff and I need to get away from it. I will notice when they typically come in, there'll be a short message from the person sending it saying, look what I've just found. I've got some special information. You've got to see this. And I really hope you will have that level of passion for the resurrection of Jesus. But I would caution you to be not that passionate about much of anything other than Jesus' resurrection. Usually when a friend sends me something of that nature, they're that passionate, I'm going to take a look. But when I get it and I open it up and it's a video that's usually between 20 minutes long and about an hour and a half, I'm going to have to figure out pretty quickly what I think of it. Because frankly, I don't have enough time to give 20 minutes to an hour and a half to watch something where you can't tell me straight up what I need to know and then flesh it out. So this is what I usually do. I usually try to figure out quickly what's the source, who's the main person who's being interviewed. Almost every time that I've gotten one of those, when I take the person's name who's considered the source and I Google him, the first hits look really good, and then I look at them and they're websites that that individual either controls or he influences. It's not being peer reviewed. It's not his peers talking about him. Then if I start Googling, usually I will find that if the person has a history in medicine, he has under some type of discipline from a medical organization. Then he'll list his credentials, and if you start Googling the organizations that are giving the credentials, they're usually not credible organizations. You'll hear him talk about his academic credentials, and if you listen close, he might have done well academically, but the field he's talking about of medicine is not his expertise area. He usually is wearing a medical suit and will use a lot of medical jargon, but he's not a credible doctor. If you then look at who is promoting it, something I'm frequently seeing is it will be promoted by a media organization where if you go and look at the agenda, and I'm saying just go to their original site, look at their news, look at their editors, most of them are what people will call the alt-right, or they might call nationalist, or some would use the phrase racist to describe them. Most of them, though they're targeting immigrant communities for this information, the broader source is trying to stifle racial reconciliation, ethnic reconciliation, and the diversity of immigration in Western European, Canadian, or United States. So I pretty quickly, within about 5 minutes, decide this is not something I need to watch because the person who's putting it out is not credible, and I see the institutional sins of racism is the driving spiritual force of this, not the life-giving powers of God. If you start watching through it, and I've had a couple of friends say, well, there's this really good stuff in there, and I hate to admit this, but I gave it enough time to say, okay, yeah, there's some good stuff in there. I watched it far enough, and my friend said it. But it's basically the good stuff that you would get if you picked up when you're checking out of the grocery store, Men's Health, Women's Health, Runner's World, some basic popular health things. They'll tell you, get a good night's sleep, eat well, here's some vitamins that might help, here's some exercise. It's all common sense. And you might get just a little bit of a twist, things that your grandma might have told you, like when your throat is hurting, drink tea and put some honey in it. It might be some little nuance. But you got to remember this, and I'm going to speak from people who know God's word. Many times when those who are described as false teachers or false prophets, or even the extreme word heretics, are speaking in the Old and New Testament, they mingle in common sense and good counsel with really bad counsel. And this stuff that's coming of vaccine conspiracy theories is really bad counsel mingled in with good stuff, but I'm going to encourage you, don't give it credibility. Now, let me think of a couple of more things I want to say about this. And here's something that my family has experienced. When you go from one nation to another, and I'll give my example, we went from the United States to Uganda to Rwanda. Those were the places we largely lived. My wife grew up in Kenya. We would travel through Europe. And when we're thinking through how do we keep our family healthy, one of the things we first did when we were in the United States planning on going to Africa was get all of the immunizations that were required by Uganda to get in and were recommended by the United States CDC and our pediatrician. When we got to Uganda, we were able to arrive in the country. We had our yellow fever shots, our cholera shots, and all of our immunizations from the U.S. And then we got sick, and then we went to Ugandan doctors, and we found out that the Ugandan medical associations have different recommendations for immunizations, that some of that comes from the World Health Organization, and sometimes we couldn't find American doctors, so we would use British doctors or Ugandan doctors who had been trained in the West, and we found we were getting different medical counsel. One of the things I'll say specifically, just to give two examples, We found that in Uganda, the World Health Organization had recommended the BCG shot. It's a preventative of tuberculosis. The United States did not. We did our research and we decided we're going to trust World Health Organization and the Uganda Ministry of Health. Our whole family got BCG shots. We also found, I always kept my mind making sure what are all the diseases out there, what shots are available, how do I keep my kids safe? We started to find, well, there would be some times where there's shots that are not required, but they are recommended. One was we were recommended to get rabies shots, and frankly, it took some money. They were expensive, but in the back of my mind, I thought, I just don't know what I'm going to get into. It might be helpful to have a rabies shot for everybody. So we got them for all of our family, and once you know it, my daughter Sophia got bit by a monkey, and I was really thankful that we had a rabies shot. Saying that, I'm going to suggest if you're not capable, and I'm going to say I'm not capable, if you're not capable of sorting through all of the complexities as a medical doctor who's well trained, I think what you need to do is trust all of the health organizations that are part of your world. If you're American, you should trust the CDC. If you go to another nation, you should trust their health organizations. You should trust your local state and local health organizations. And then you should assume those people have done their research, they know what they're talking about, and you should do what they mandate and do what they recommend. And I think in the big picture, you're going to keep most of the people near you healthy. Assume that. And if we're going to look at Bible where it talks about submitting to government authorities, this is that place. I want to add another thing that just popped into my mind about these conspiracy theories that I'm seeing going around. Another argument that many of those people are picking up is they're picking up, we're having vaccines mandated to us. The government, in fact, I've heard people say this and write this, we've never had a vaccine mandated to us in the past. And I find that just stunning because I remember as a little kid, my mom keeping the vaccine records, and I'm 5 years old, and she has to show that so I can go to kindergarten. And I've had to do that for all of my 5 kids. To get my kids into school, they had to have mandatory vaccines. I remember needing mandatory vaccines to cross borders into Uganda and Rwanda. I remember some times where I had forgotten where my vaccine card was, and I just sat down and said, "Give it to me, doc. Get me documented and right." That's another thing. These conspiracy theories aren't giving you accurate information about our government, folks. Let me kind of close this out, summarize it up, and I hope this is good counsel for you. One, if you look back on the history of the last couple of years, there have been vaccine conspiracy theories that immigrant communities have taken and ran with, partially because they were trying to figure out things that were different from what they had experienced, and they were trying to protect their kids. But the process was there were significant immigrant communities in Western European nations, Canada, and the United States that didn't get their kids fully vaccinated, and we saw measles outbreaks in cities that hadn't seen measles outbreaks in years upon years. That has resulted in 2 things society-wise. One, we're playing with the health of kids. 2, it encourages the nationalists and the racists to lift that up in the media and encourage the sin of race in the West. What I'm going to see happening practically is as the pandemic has come, many of us have been overwhelmed and have acted out of fear, and we've gone looking for information, and instead of allowing that information to make us better people, it has fueled the fear. And I am now seeing occasionally on Facebook, though Facebook usually shuts it down, but I see it frequently in emails, WhatsApp, in text, and Facebook Messenger, people pushing around these vaccine conspiracy theories. And if you dig, you'll find they're usually put out by individuals who may have a little bit of academic training, but they're under discipline from the medical fields, or their academic training is not medical. They're usually very long. They usually use medical jargon. They usually dress up like doctors, but they're usually not doctors. And they talk some good things, but then there's just a lot of nonsense. And the end ends up encouraging people not to vaccinate. Let me encourage you through this pandemic, go looking for good information. I'm going to keep posting it. Organizations that I lead are going to keep posting it. You'll find it from us. And the best sources are going to be places like your government leaders, such as if you're in the United States, the CDC, or your state health department, or your county health department, or your local health department. If you're hearing this from European nations or Canada or nations like Korea or Philippines where people pick up our stuff, turn to your local health authorities. They're good folks. They know what they're doing. Don't fall for these conspiracy theories. I think that's about all I have to say. I'm going to look across the way at my lovely editor. Is there anything more I should say? I got the thumbs up. So I'm going to get off. Love you guys. I have enjoyed this conversation. Let's keep it going. But the closing thing, if you post anything below here about what I perceive to be promoting a conspiracy theory, I'm taking it off right away. I will not give it visibility or credibility, even in an argument. And you guys know that's not how I normally do things. But I'm going to be steadfast about this. I'm going to protect our diaspora communities and not let the nonsense have a foothold. Have a great weekend. I'm going on a bike ride. Get some exercise. Have fun. Love on your kids. Eat well. Celebrate the resurrection tomorrow. Bye-bye.